The first time my new neighbor knocked at 12:43 p. He said I had whispered his name through the wall. I stood there in house slippers, one hand gripping a leaking trash bag, the old elevator groaning below us like it was climbing out of a well. I had never spoken to him alone. His smile looked shy, almost hurt. "You called me again," he said. Again. The hallway sensor light flickered over his shoulder, bleaching his face, then dropping it into shadow. I told him he had wrong apartment. He glanced past me toward my dark kitchen and said, "But you're always up after midnight on Tuesdays." My hand tightened on the trash bag until plastic squeaked. By morning, I had almost talked myself out of being scared. That had become a habit after my divorce. I took every feeling, measured it twice, then cut it smaller so no one could call me dramatic. My life was not the kind people watched. I worked second shift at Street Mariness Hospital, in a windowless lab that smelled like latex gloves, disinfectant, and burnt coffee. I processed blood and urine samples, wore navy scrubs, kept my ID badge clipped to my chest, and spent my evenings labeling tubes while other people's emergencies arrived sealed in plastic bags. By the time I got home, the building was usually half asleep. I microwaved the lunch I had packed in a hurry that morning, ate it standing at the counter, washed the container, and set it upside down on a towel. If I had energy left, I watered the basil plant on my windowsill. If I didn't, I touched one leaf and whispered, "Tomorrow." Quiet was why I had chosen that apartment. After 12 years of marriage, quiet felt like clean sheets. Daniel had not been cruel. That made the ending harder to explain. We had become two polite people passing bills, weather reports, and grocery lists back and forth until he said, "I think we're both lonely in here." And I knew he was right. So I moved into a one-bedroom on the 6th floor with thin walls, a stubborn radiator, and enough space for one person to stop pretending. I did not have guests. I did not play music loud. I worked, came home, showered, read 3 pages of a book I never finished, and tried to sleep before my mind started chewing old things. But insomnia made me strange. Pipes became footsteps. Elevator cables sounded like breathing. Once, I woke at 3 o'clock. Certain someone was in my kitchen, only to find my employee badge swinging from a chair where I had dropped it. So after that first knock, I told myself to be reasonable. Maybe sound traveled badly through old plaster. Maybe he had hurt another woman. Maybe I had muttered in my sleep. At work that evening, Tasha from chemistry asked why I looked pale. "Bad sleep," I said. She nodded like that explained everything. When I came home, I paused before unlocking my door. The hall was empty. Apartment 6B was silent. Still, I stood there with my keys in my fist, listening. Then I went inside and turned every light on. The second time I saw him, it was morning, which somehow made it worse. I had stopped in the mailroom after work because a delivery slip was wedged halfway out of my dented mailbox, bent like someone had tugged it loose, then changed their mind. It was 7:18. I remember because I wanted my shoes off by 7:30. The room smelled like dust, cold metal, and detergent from the laundry machines down the hall. I was still in my scrubs, mascara smudged under my eyes, holding a pharmacy bag with ibuprofen, dish soap, and a small box of chamomile tea. "You like that brand?" My keys struck the mailboxes when I turned. He stood by the package shelf in a gray jacket, one hand in his pocket. In daylight, he looked younger, clean, almost ordinary. For 1 second, I could not place his name. Then I remembered label under 6B. Elliot Voss, not name he claimed I had whispered through wall. I pushed tea deeper into bag. "Excuse me, Gemeline," he said, nodding at my groceries. "Most people buy yellow box. You get blue one." My stomach tightened slowly. "I don't think we've met," I said, though we had, in worst way. His expressions often. "Other night. Elliot. I know. Too sharp." He looked down, smiled at floor. "I didn't mean scare you." I do maintenance contracts. Odd hours. Sleep gets strange. No uniform. No toolbox. Just calm voice. Like we were inside conversation I had forgotten. I grabbed delivery, slip and shut mailbox. Then he said, "Your kitchen light was off last night." My fingers froze on brass door. Mailroom hummed. Washer thumped below us. Wet and heavy. What? Usually you turn it on when you get home. He lifted both hands. I noticed because windows face courtyard. Reflections bounce. Old buildings are weird. My apartment doesn't face yours. Not directly. Small laugh. Across and down. If my blinds are open, I can see your window and stairwell glass. Not clearly. Just light. That should have made it smaller. Instead, whole building felt full of hidden angles. Behind him, beside one CS mailbox, fake doorbell cameras at dusty and dead. I had laughed at it once. Now black plastic eye seemed aimed at me. Elliot stepped aside. Anyway, hope tea helps. I walked past without answering. At elevator, I pressed button 3 times though it was already lit. When doors opened, I turned back. Elliot stood in mailroom doorway. Not following, not smiling, watching like he had nowhere else to be. I saw him 2 nights later by the recycling bins, folding a pizza box with careful hands. It was 9:18. I checked my phone before speaking. As if time itself could be proof. Elliot. He looked up too fast. Not startled. Ready? The laundry room hummed behind us. Air smelled like detergent and wet cardboard. I stood in my slippers with empty seltzer cans in one hand. He's threaded between my fingers in the other. I need to be clear. I said. Don't knock on my door after 9. Don't comment on my lights, my schedule, or what I buy. It makes me uncomfortable. His face shifted blank. Hurt. Polite. I'm sorry, he said. I didn't mean to scare you. I didn't say scare. No. Right. He pressed the box flat. Uncomfortable. I understand. That almost made me feel rude. He sounded calm. Reasonable. Like I was correcting someone who had borrowed a cup of sugar. I wanted to soften it. Add a joke. Make sure he knew I was not cruel. That reflex had survived my whole marriage smile when cornered. Explain when no explanation was owed. I kept my mouth shut. He slid the cardboard into the bin. I'm bad with boundaries sometimes. Not in a dangerous way. I just noticed patterns. I stepped back, then noticed this one. He nodded. No knocking after 9. No comments. And no gifts, I said, surprising myself. His eyebrows lifted. There had been no gifts. Only tea he remembered. Lights he watched. One midnight knock still sitting cold in my chest. Okay, he said softly. No gifts. I took the elevator up without turning around. In the warped metal doors, I saw my pale face. Bad hair clip. One slipper crushed under my heel. I looked like someone pretending to be brave. Inside my apartment, I locked the door twice. I told myself that was the end. The next morning, a plastic-wrapped blueberry muffin sat on my doormat. My hand stayed on the inside knob. The hallway was empty except for the flickering sensor light and Mrs. Alvarez's newspaper across from me. The muffin was from the corner bakery. Clear wrap. White sticker. Moist crumbs pressed against plastic. Under it lay a blue sticky note. For your bad sleep. No name, no apology. No smiley face. Anger came first. Sharpened clean. Then fear. Followed by shame. Because what would I report? My neighbor left breakfast. My neighbor guessed I was tired. I crouched without stepping fully into the hall and picked up the note by one corner. My slippers scuffed the floor. The peephole stared back from my door like a blind little eye. I looked through it anyway. Nothing. Beige carpet. Elevator dent. Fire extinguisher case. Still, I imagined him outside its range. Shoulder against the wall. Listening. I set the muffin on the counter like it might leak something. Though seal looked untouched. Then I washed my hands twice. By the window. My basil plant drooped. Thirsty. Tomorrow. I whispered, touching one leaf. Then I froze. Because that was the kind of thing people said only when they believed no one could hear. By noon, the muffin was still on my counter. I hadn't thrown it away because that felt dramatic. I hadn't eaten it because I was stupid. It sat by the sink like evidence nobody had agreed to call evidence yet. After 3 hours of sleep, I put the blue sticky note in a sandwich bag and took it downstairs. The management office hid behind the lobby, beside package lockers and a bulletin board crowded with dog walking flyers, lost earrings, and an orange notice about wipes. It smelled like burned coffee. Marcy looked up from her computer. Everything okay, Lina? I hated that question. It gave me 1 second to become easy. I need to ask about Elliot in 6B. Her fingers stopped over the keyboard. I set the bag on her desk. He left food at my door after I told him not to contact me. He comments on my schedule, my lights, what I buy. Marcy leaned back. Her chair squeaked. HES quiet. Pays on time. I haven't had complaints. That doesn't mean nothing is happening. I didn't say that. But she had. In her tired eyes in the way, she glanced toward the lobby window. He asked why my kitchen light was off. I said, these old buildings have odd sight lines. He should not be watching my kitchen. Her mouth tightened. Maybe he meant well. He froze behind my eyes. I hated that too. Tears make fear look soft. And fear was not soft. Fear had kept me awake with my hand on the deadbolt. I'm not asking you to evict him, I said. I'm asking if he has asked about me. Marcy looked at the note. For your bad sleep. She opened a drawer, took out a pen, clicked it twice, and didn't write. He asked if you were still married. She said. My throat closed. When? Couple weeks ago. Said he recognized your last name from the mailbox and didn't want to use the wrong title. My mailbox doesn't say Mrs. I know. Coffee burned in the pot behind her. What else? He asked if you work nights. Said packages sit outside your door and he worried about theft. That's not his business. No, she said. Softer. It isn't. I need that written down. I'll make an incident memo. Today. She nodded. Today. On my way out. Washers thudded in the ground floor laundry room. Mrs. Alvarez was inside, folding white towels from a blue basket. Mrs. Alvarez. I said, has the man in 6B ever asked you about me? Her smile faded. Tall one? Soft voice. Yes. She looked toward the hall. He asks too much. My skin prickled. What did he ask? If you live alone. If your husband comes back. Do you have family nearby? She folded a towel crooked. I told him I don't know people's private things. When was this? Different times. Mailboxes. Elevator. Once here. She touched the dryer. He said you look tired. Asked if hospital makes you sick. I had never told him I worked at a hospital. My badge stayed in my bag. Scrubs could mean any clinic, any lab, any nursing home. But hospital landed inside me with a cold. Exact click. Mrs. Alvarez almost touched my wrist, then stopped. Be careful. Major. I nodded because speaking would have cracked something open. In the lobby, Marcy stood behind glass with a yellow form in her hand. Proof. Maybe. Or beginning of proof. When elevator doors opened. Nobody was inside. Still, I waited for next one. That afternoon, I did something I kept telling myself not to do. I searched his name. After Mrs. Alvarez said he had worked at a hospital, my willpower folded. My laptop hummed on my knees, hot and slow, while my tea cooled beside me. I found his last name on the tenant directory by memory because I had stared at it too many mornings. Pretending to check for packages. 3 results down. There he was. Not a mugshot. Not a warning article. Nothing that made fear clean or easy. A staff photo from an outpatient behavioral health center 2 towns over. He looked younger in blue scrubs. Badge crooked. Eyes tired but kind. Patient support technician, the caption said. Under it were phrases like crisis de-escalation, compassionate care, vulnerable adults. I read it twice. Then I sat there, ashamed of how relieved I wanted to feel. Maybe that explained him. Maybe he watched people because watching had been part of his job. Maybe he noticed sleep, lights, routines, because he had spent years looking for signs that someone might hurt or need help. Maybe he was burned out and lonely and bad at boundaries, not dangerous. Maybe I had turned an awkward man into a monster because I was tired and divorced and alone. I hated that thought most because it sounded reasonable. Then my laptop pinged. A new message opened in my personal email, the one I used for bills, coupons, and dentist reminders. Not my hospital account. Not anything posted in the lobby. The sender was him. Subject apology. My fingers went numb before I clicked. I should not have left anything at your door. You were clear, and I disrespected that. The sentences were neat, calm, no threats, no insults, nothing I could show someone and say, look, this is proof. I worked in mental health support for 8 years, and sometimes I overfocus when I think someone may be unsafe. That is my responsibility, not yours. I am not trying to frighten you. I only want to make sure you're safe. The heater clicked under the window. Somewhere outside, a truck backed up in slow beeps. My tea had gone cold enough to leave a skin on top. I checked the address line. Then the timestamp. Then, stupidly, my contacts, as if I might have handed him my email and forgotten. I had not. My ex had it. My sister had it. The pharmacy had it. The landlord's portal had it. The man in 6B did not. I stood too fast, and the laptop slid against my knees. For 1 second, I saw myself from outside, a grown woman in faded socks, shaking over an apology. Then another message arrived. No subject. Please don't be upset. You looked very pale when you came in today. I had not come through the lobby. I had used the side entrance. By the time my shift ended, my hands were steady in that fake professional way they got after hours of labeling blood tubes and pretending my own pulse was none of my business. Noah from chemistry was rinsing his coffee mug when he saw me checking employee entrance through glass. You waiting for somebody? I almost said no. That was answer women gave when they didn't want to be burdened. Instead, I said, could you walk me to my building? He didn't smirk, didn't ask if I was overreacting. He only grabbed his jacket and said, yeah, of course. Ride home stayed quiet except for wipers dragging rain across windshield. His old sedan smelled like mint gum and damp upholstery. I kept my phone lit in my lap, thumb hovering over Marcia's number. At every red light, I checked side mirrors like someone had assigned me to watch them. You want me to wait until you're inside? Noah asked. Yes. That one word felt heavier than it should have. My lobby was bright in mean fluorescent way that made everyone look sick. Fake plant by mailboxes through crooked shadow on tile. Noah held door while I stepped in. Elliot stood beside package lockers. Not opening one. Not holding mail. Just standing in gray sweatshirt with his hands folded in front of him. Like he had been placed there. His eyes moved from my face to no shoes. Then back to me. Evening, Noah said. Polite but flat. Elliot didn't answer him. Elevator cables groaned somewhere above us. My keys knocked together in my hand. Tiny bright sounds I called and stop. Come on, I whispered. Noah walked me to elevator. Elliot watched us cross lobby. I felt his stare settle between my shoulder blades and stay there until doors shut. On my floor, Noah waited while I unlocked my apartment. Text me when you're bolted in, he said. I'm bolted in now. Text me anyway. After he left, I put my back to door and locked everything twice. Deadbolt, chain, bottom latch I had ignored for 2 years. Then came knock. Not loud, not angry. 3 soft taps. My body went cold before my brain caught up. I opened voice recorder and held phone near my chest. Lina, Elliot said through door. Who was that? I didn't answer. I saw him bring you home. Red line climbed 6 seconds. 7. 8. You don't need to explain, he said, which meant he wanted me to. I was concerned. It's late. Leave, I said. My voice sounded small but sharp. Silence. then breath, close to door. You should be careful who you trust. My throat burned. Do not come to my door again. I'm not trying to upset you. You are upsetting me. Another pause. Hallway light hummed through crack under door. I pictured him standing there, head tilted, listening for me to move. He doesn't know you, Elliot said. Something in me snapped clean. Not loud. Clean. You don't know me either. For once, he had no ready answer. I kept recording until my arm ached. My apartment smelled like disinfectant from my work shoes and cold chamomile I hadn't finished. Normal things looked staged around me, like evidence waiting for labels. After a full minute, his footsteps moved away, slow, no rush, like he wanted me to hear him choosing to leave. I stayed against door until my knees hurt. Then I saved file, named it with date, time, and one word I had avoided for weeks. Proof. The next morning, my internet died. It was so ordinary I almost cried from relief. A blinking router. A customer service number. Hold music instead of breathing outside my door. I had slept 3 hours in my scrubs with my phone under my pillow. When the router light blinked red, I stood in my kitchen and watched it like it was trying to warn me. The cable company said there was no outage. Can you check your floor's connection point? The woman asked. Older buildings have loose wires sometimes. I nearly said I didn't know where that was. Then I remembered the narrow utility closet at the end of the hall. The one with chipped beige painted tiny brass key hanging in the laundry office. Mrs. Alvarez called at the guts of the floor. I put on shoes. I took my phone. I pressed record before opening my door. The hallway looked empty, but it did not feel empty. The carpet smelled damp from someone's leaking trash bag. The fluorescent light buzzed in short, nervous bursts. At the closet, the key stuck twice before turning. Inside were cables, pipes, dust, and old heat. Nothing dramatic. Gray boxes, zip ties, labels and fading marker. Then I saw my apartment number. For C, a black cable ran from my box, then vanished behind other wires. Something small had been fastened there with 2 black zip ties. At first, my brain refused to name it. It was no bigger than a matchbox, matte black, with a tiny lens pointed through a ragged gap in the closet wall, toward my door. My hand went so cold I almost dropped the phone. The lens was dusty around the edges, but clean in the center, recently wiped, deliberate, patient, not confusion through thin walls. Not a lonely man with bad boundaries, not concern. A camera. I backed away and hit the metal shelf. A screwdriver rolled off and clanged against the floor. I froze, waiting for his door to open, waiting for his calm voice to tell me I was overreacting. Nothing happened. That silence felt worse. I forced my hand steady and filmed the box, the cable, the zip ties, the lens. I said the date, my apartment number, his apartment across the hall. My voice came out flat, almost professional, like I was reading lab results. Then I noticed a second wire. It ran along the baseboard, painted the same dull color as the wall, leading toward the laundry room. I followed it 3 steps and saw where it ended. Another device was fixed behind the metal frame of the side entrance, not pointed outside, pointed inward, at me. Last night. That was how he knew. I pressed my palm to the wall as every small thing returned at once: the tea, the kitchen light, my pale face, my co-worker's car, the side door. I remembered apologizing inside my own head for being afraid. The guilt burned off first, then fear changed shape. It became cold and clean. I did not touch the wires. I did not pull anything loose. I did not give him one chance to say I planted it, broke it, or imagined it. I called the property manager from the hallway. You need to come to the 4th floor right now, she sighed. Is this about your neighbor again? No, I said, staring into the tiny black lens. It's about the camera he hid outside my door. For once, she did not tell me I might be mistaken. The property manager arrived in slippers and a raincoat, like she had been pulled out of another life. At first, she looked annoyed. Then she saw the lens. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She leaned toward the wall, careful not to touch anything. And the hallway went so quiet I could hear water moving through pipes. Is that recording? She whispered. I don't know. My voice sounded far away. She stepped back and looked at me differently. Not like a tenant who complained. Like someone who had been standing in front of a fire and calling it weather. I'm calling maintenance, she said. Call police too. She nodded. Yes. Of course. While she made the calls. I folded my arms so tight my fingers went numb. Doors stayed shut along the hall. Behind them, people made coffee, ran sinks, told children to find their shoes, lived inside walls that suddenly felt thin as paper. I thought about every time I had talked myself down. He is lonely. He is awkward. Maybe I left the light on. Maybe my curtains were open. Maybe I am making my life harder because I don't know how to be normal after divorce. That last one hurt most because it had sounded so reasonable in my own head. I had used my own tiredness as evidence against myself. The manager ended the call and looked at the side entrance camera. I'm so sorry, she said. I wanted the apology to fix something. It didn't. It was hidden well. I said, no. That means he didn't think anyone would look. She pressed her lips together. I went back inside while we waited. I left the door open because she was in the hallway. And still I hated that open space behind me. My apartment looked smaller in daylight. Scrubs over the chair. Basil leaning toward the window. Half a mug of tea on the counter with a pale skin across the top. I poured it out. My hands shook when I washed the cup. Not dramatic shaking. Small, stubborn tremors that made porcelain click against the sink. Marcy called back on the second drink. I found something, I said. What kind of something? A camera. Silence hit hard. Then her voice changed. Are you alone? No. Manager is here. Police are coming. Good. Put me on speaker. So I did. She stayed there while I packed my ID, charger, medication, and work badge into a tote bag. Ordinary items. Emergency weight. Outside, boots sounded on the stairs. Radios crackled. Before I walked out, I looked once at my apartment. For weeks, I had thought fear made me smaller. Now I understood something quiet and brutal. Fear had been warning me. I was the one who kept telling it to be polite. The officer did not call it a misunderstanding. He stood in the utility closet with blue gloves on, staring at the little black camera above the pipes. Then he looked at me and said, "You were right to record this." I had not known how badly I needed one clear sentence. The building manager stood near the washers, pale, clutching her keys. A cable technician came 40 minutes later with a handheld meter and followed the wires through dust and old paint. He kept saying, "This isn't ours," in a flat voice. They found 3 devices. One pointed toward my door, one near the side entrance, one tucked above the mailboxes, low enough to catch faces, hands, and keys. When officers knocked across the hall, I waited inside Mrs. Alvarez's apartment with Marcy still on speaker. The kitchen smelled like cinnamon and dish soap. The wall clock ticked so loudly it felt rude. I heard his door open, then his voice, calm and wounded. I was trying to help. My stomach turned. I pressed both hands against it. They searched his apartment after he gave permission, then tried to take it back. I did not go inside. I saw one officer carry out a phone sealed in plastic, then a folder of printed screenshots. Later, at the station, a detective showed me enough to make my ears ring. Pictures of my work schedule board, my car, my grocery bags. One blurry photo of me on my kitchen floor after a bad shift, eating cereal from a mug because I was too tired to wash a bowl. There was no romance in it, no tragic mistake, no lonely man who loved too much. There was only taking. By evening, he could not enter the building without police. By morning, management served him notice. By Friday, a temporary no-contact order sat folded in my purse beside my hospital badge. Paper felt too thin for what it promised, but it was something. A locksmith changed both locks while I stood in yesterday's sweatshirt. Metal shavings fell onto his towel. The new deadbolt clicked harder than the old one. I bought real cameras, new curtains, and a small legal flashlight for my coat pocket. I saved every report number. That night, I sat on my bed and shook, not because nothing had been done, because something had. And because, for weeks, scariest voice had been my own, whispering, "Don't make scene." 3 months later, I still lived in the same building, but not in the same apartment. Management moved me 2 floors up, to a brighter hall where a toddler stuck cartoon stickers on the elevator, buttons, and a small dog barked at every grocery bag like it had crossed a border. It was not perfect. It was different. My basil plant came with me in its cracked white pot for 2 weeks. It looked dead. Then one morning, one green leaf pushed up near the stem, stubborn and ordinary, and I cried harder than that tiny leaf deserved. I joined the residents group. I learned names. I learned who had twins, who worked nights, and which maintenance requests needed 3 emails. I learned to say, "No, that doesn't work for me," without adding sorry. The coworker who drove me home that night became my emergency contact and Sunday coffee friend. Nothing more. That mattered. Not every man in a story has to become a rescue. Some nights, I still checked the camera twice. Some nights, I woke at 12:43 p.m. and listened until my breathing stopped sounding like a warning. But fear no longer owned the room. One rainy Thursday, someone knocked. I was in socks, holding hot tea, my new shift calendar taped beside the fridge. My shoulders tightened before my thoughts caught up. Then I checked the video screen. A delivery driver stood outside, hood dripping, package tucked under one arm. I did not open the door. I pressed the speaker. "Wrong unit." He apologized and left. I stood in my warm kitchen, behind my locked door, with basil growing on the sill and drain tapping glass. Not every sound was danger, but my unease had earned the right to be heard. This time, silence did not feel empty. It felt like mine.